Cassandra stepped into the living room, her heart thudding in her chest. The couch cushions were slashed, drawers yanked out, her jewelry box empty. Her wedding ring, the one Marcus had placed on her finger 5 years ago, was gone. She clutched her swollen belly, 7 months pregnant and trembling. Police officers whispered near the front door. "Look staged," one murmured. "Inside job," said another. Cassandra could barely hear them over the sound of her own racing thoughts. She wanted to scream, to understand, but nothing made sense. Who would rob her and leave everything that actually mattered? Flash forward 5 years. Cassandra stands at a courtroom podium in a navy suit, poised and confident, addressing a jury. The screen behind her displays spreadsheets and transaction trails. She's not a victim anymore. She's the expert now. This is the story of how a woman betrayed, robbed, and discarded turned her pain into power and caught the man who thought he'd never be found. Cassandra had always been methodical, precise, the kind of person who kept color-scattered spreadsheets for their vacation plans. At 33, she had a thriving career as a financial analyst in Nashville. She loved numbers because they made sense. They followed rules. Unlike people, but for a long time, she believed Marcus was the exception. Her husband, with his easy charm and crooked smile, had swept her off her feet 5 years earlier. He planned surprise getaways, left notes in her laptop bag, and made her feel like the only woman in the world. Their wedding was small but perfect. A year later, they bought their dream home on a quiet street lined with maples. It had a nursery already painted pale yellow. Everything felt like it was falling into place. When they decided to try for a baby, it was Marcus who brought home a stack of parenting books and built a crib by hand. Cassandra remembers the first positive test, how he'd lifted her and spun her around. They cried together. For a moment, it was everything she had hoped for. But then, the shift began. Subtle at first. Marcus started coming home late. He claimed it was work, new deadlines, demanding clients, nothing unusual. He stopped touching her belly at night. When she offered to join him for lunch, he declined, saying meetings were back-to-back. His kisses grew quick, absent. Their laughter faded into silence, and their once effluent conversations became stilted. Cassandra felt it, deeply, but she didn't want to admit it. She was pregnant, emotional, vulnerable. Maybe it was just hormones making her overly sensitive. That's what Marcus said too. "You're overthinking things," he'd whisper with a tired smile. "It's just stress. We'll be fine." She wanted to believe him, so she clung harder to their old routines. She kept cooking his favorite meals, kept folding his laundry the way he liked, kept the nursery clean and hopeful. She read every pregnancy book she could find and took prenatal yoga classes to calm her nerves. Still, the distance grew. She began noticing inconsistencies, receipts for places he never mentioned, phone calls he took in the garage, passwords suddenly changed. One night, she heard him arguing with someone on the phone, voice low and panicked. When she asked, he claimed it was about work again. Cassandra smiled, nodded, and went back to organizing baby clothes. But the seed of doubt was already planted. Despite the unease, she tried to stay positive. She journaled daily, meditated, even started a gratitude list. She reminded herself that Marcus had been her anchor, that they'd made vows, that she was probably just being irrational. But deep down, beneath the love and hope, was something heavier, something sharp and growing, a sense that her perfect life wasn't as perfect as it looked. She just didn't know yet how much of it had already been stolen. It started with small things, a missing $100 here, a strange charge there. Cassandra first noticed when she went to pay the electric bill and saw their joint account balance was lower than expected. When she asked Marcus, he shrugged and said he'd paid for some home repairs. "The water heater's acting up," he told her. I didn't want to believe him. She needed to believe him. But when she checked the garage, the water heater was fine and hadn't been serviced in years. Then came the dinners. One night, she found a receipt crumpled in his coat pocket. Dinner for two at a high-end sushi place they'd never been to together. The date, a Tuesday night she'd spent alone with a book and her feet swollen from pregnancy. She asked him about it, gently. Marcus rolled his eyes. That was a client dinner. You think I'm whining and dining someone while you're at home pregnant? The next week, it was a charge from a boutique flower shop. Another time, a jewelry receipt. But Cassandra never saw any flowers. She never received a gift. When she asked again, his patience wore thin. You're imagining things. You're hormonal. You're stressed and it's clouding your judgment. That word, imagining, stuck in her head like a splinter. She tried to push it away, to remind herself that her husband wouldn't lie, wouldn't cheat, wouldn't hide. But something in her gut said otherwise. Then came the phone call. It was nearly midnight. Cassandra couldn't sleep, so she walked to the kitchen for some tea. That's when she heard it. Marcus, in his office, laughing. A soft, intimate laugh she hadn't heard from him in months. He was on the phone, and he didn't sound like the Marcus she knew. He sounded lighter, younger, free. She crept closer, heart pounding, but only caught fragments. A woman's name, the words, next weekend. And then, laughter again. She backed away before he noticed, pretended she hadn't heard anything. The next morning, he kissed her forehead and said he'd be working late again. She nodded, heart heavy, mouth quiet. That day, Cassandra bought a notebook. Nothing special, just a soft-covered spiral with lined pages. And she began logging everything. Every strange charge, every unexplained withdrawal, every excuse, every lie. She didn't confront him, not yet. She needed more than suspicion. She needed certainty. She wrote it all down. His lies, his laughter, her growing fear. Something was unraveling, and Cassandra knew, whatever was coming, it wouldn't be small. It wouldn't be kind. The day had started like any other. Cassandra went to her prenatal appointment alone. Marcus said he had a work call he couldn't miss. She didn't argue anymore. She sat through the ultrasound quietly, watching the flicker of their baby's heartbeat on the screen, trying to focus on the wonder instead of the ache in her chest. But when she returned home, the wonder vanished. The front door was slightly ajar. Her heart sank. Inside, the house was in chaos. Drawers pulled out, cushions tossed, jewelry boxes empty. Her grandmother's locket, gone. The sapphire earrings Marcus gave her for their first anniversary, gone. And worst of all, her wedding ring, always kept in a dish by the sink when her hands swelled. Cassandra stumbled backward, shaking, and called the police. When they arrived, they surveyed the scene and exchanged glances. One officer gently said, "It looks like an inside job, no forced entry, just targeted items." Marcus showed up 20 minutes later, all wide eyes and breathless concern. "Oh my God, Cass, are you okay?" he asked, pulling her close. But his embrace felt her pursed. Too quick, too cool. He walked through the mess with barely a glance at what was missing. That night, as he filled out the insurance claim, Cassandra watched him carefully. He knew what to write, exactly which items were missing, even ones she hadn't mentioned. His pen moved too confidently. No hesitation, no grief. Something didn't sit right. While Marcus slept, Cassandra pulled up the security app on her phone. They had cameras, a full system. She expected to see the alarm triggered, something, anything. But there it was, nothing. No motion detected, no alarm. She checked the logs. The alarm was never set that morning. She paused, then checked the side camera feed, the one pointed at the living room window. She watched as Marcus left the house, 30 minutes before she did. But he didn't just leave. He walked to the side window, looked around, and slid it open. He didn't set the alarm. He unlocked the window. Cassandra's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't a robbery. It was a performance, a cover. He'd stolen from her, from their unborn child. He'd taken not only valuables, but trust, safety, and the final illusion of love. The ring was symbolic. It was about severing ties. The man she'd built a life with had staged a break-in to steal from her, and she'd been pregnant and alone through it all. That night she lay awake in the guest room. Her hands cradled her belly, not in wonder, but in defense. Everything was clear now. Marcus wasn't just cheating. He was erasing her, piece by piece. And she was done letting it happen. Cassandra didn't confront Marcus. Not yet. Not while she was still in his house, under his roof, and carrying his child. Instead, she waited until the next morning, until he left for work, until the house was quiet again. And then she opened her laptop. She started with the bank records. She pulled every statement from the past 18 months. Credit cards, savings accounts, even their retirement contributions. It took hours, but what she found made her blood run cold. There was a credit card she didn't recognize, registered in Marcus's name at a different address. She ran the statements. Hotel bookings in Asheville, dinners at odd hours. And worse, international flight confirmations from 6 months ago. But Marcus had never said he'd left the country. Cassandra dug deeper. She still had access to his cloud drive from a shared wedding planning app they never deleted. She typed in the password, his college football number, and his birthday. It worked. Inside, she found folders he clearly didn't expect anyone to see. One was labeled Property Receipts. Another was called B and Me. Her hands shook as she opened the second folder. Inside were dozens of photos. Marcus on a beach. Marcus sipping wine at a vineyard. Marcus lying in bed next to a smiling brunette. Some of the selfies were time-stamped during weekends he told her he was at off-site leadership retreats. The woman was labeled simply as B. That night, Cassandra printed everything, not just one copy. She made multiple sets, labeled and stored in a box she hid in a neighbor's garage with their permission, no questions asked. She gave one envelope to a lawyer she found through a friend in her prenatal yoga class. The lawyer's face said it all when she saw the documentation. Then Cassandra did something Marcus never expected. She hired a private investigator. Within 72 hours, the PI had everything she needed. Photos, logs, a full report. Marcus wasn't just cheating. He had a second life. The woman, B, was Becca Tomlinson, a freelance travel blogger. They were seen together often, publicly, recklessly. The most damning piece came in the form of a video. Marcus and Becca pulling up to a cabin, and when he'd told Cassandra and Cassandra was a work team building site. The footage was time-stamped for a weekend Marcus claimed he was visiting his brother in Memphis. The video showed them kissing in the driveway, unloading groceries, and disappearing inside, hand in hand. Cassandra watched it once, just once, and then she exhaled. She didn't throw a fit. She didn't scream or cry. She planned. She quietly transferred half of the funds from their joint checking into an account in her name. She changed her direct deposit at work to route to her own private account. She spoke to her OB about switching to a different hospital and asked about transferring her medical records. She also began documenting everything, his schedule, his moods, and his movements. Just in case. 'Cause now it wasn't about heartbreak. It was about strategy and survival. Cassandra's next move was methodical. She contacted the insurance company and requested to speak with a fraud investigator. She kept her voice steady as she explained that she believed her recent home break-in was staged. When they asked why, she forwarded the security footage, the alarm logs showing no activation, and Marcus's insurance claim that suspiciously listed only sentimental, high-value jewelry items. She followed up with documentation showing Marcus's escalating withdrawals and purchases on a separate card. The agent said very little on the phone, but within 48 hours, a full audit was underway. Then she went to the police. Cassandra met with a detective, presented every shred of evidence she'd compiled: bank records, video of Marcus with his mistress, proof of his secret account, and insurance documents. She made it clear she wasn't just a jilted wife, she was a financial analyst. She had followed every one of his. The arrest came quickly after that. Marcus had taken Becca to brunch at a trendy Nashville cafe. He was halfway through his Eggs Benedict when 2 officers walked in, cuffed him, and led him past shocked diners. Becca screamed. Marcus tried to argue, but he was already in the back of the squad car before he could finish the sentence. Cassandra wasn't there to see it, but the detective later said his expression was a mix of rage and disbelief, as if he'd truly thought he was untouchable. With Marcus in custody, Cassandra filed for divorce. Her attorney filed an emergency motion to freeze all joint assets, citing the pending criminal investigation. Marcus's accounts were locked by the next morning. Cassandra stayed quiet, even as her inbox filled with gossip from friends and coworkers who'd heard about the arrest. Instead, she shared her story anonymously on a blog for women who'd experienced financial infidelity and fraud. She titled the post, "The Robbery I Married." It went viral within days. Readers flooded the comments with shock, support, and their own stories of betrayal. The post was picked up by a financial news site. A week later, a reporter from a major investigative outlet contacted Cassandra. She agreed to an interview, but only on one condition: they'd wait to publish anything until after Marcus's trial. Court began 6 weeks later. Cassandra walked into the courthouse, 8 months pregnant, calm and composed. Marcus sat at the defense table, looking thinner, paler, eyes darting everywhere except toward her. Becca wasn't there. Cassandra's testimony was precise. She spoke clearly, firmly, like she was giving a presentation to a boardroom. She walked the court through bank statements, timeline spreadsheets, insurance reports. When Marcus's lawyer tried to argue her motivations were emotional, she countered by presenting certified documentation and cross-referenced records. Her performance wasn't vengeful, it was professional. The prosecution rested after 3 days. The defense attempted to paint Marcus as desperate and misguided, claiming he panicked about money and the pressure of fatherhood. But the evidence Cassandra provided made those excuses crumble. There was no panic, only a plan, and now it had collapsed. The verdict came in quickly. Guilty on 3 counts: insurance fraud, willful property destruction, and attempted financial deception through marital fraud. As Marcus was led away, Cassandra didn't look at him. She focused instead on her attorney, who gently squeezed her hand, and the courtroom clerk, who gave her a small, respectful nod. She walked out of the courthouse into the crisp fall air, her belly heavy with life, her heart no longer weighed down by lies. Her story had started with a staged robbery. Now, it was a landmark case. And Cassandra wasn't a victim anymore. She was a force. Cassandra stood in the family courtroom, this time not as a victim, but as a mother protecting her child's future. The judge awarded her full custody, citing Marcus's proven history of deception and fraud. She also retained the house, as well as restitution for damages caused during the staged robbery and court costs Marcus was ordered to cover. He was sentenced to 5 years of probation, over 1,000 hours of community service, and mandated to attend financial rehabilitation sessions. It wasn't prison time, but it was public, humiliating, and a permanent mark on his professional record. Marcus's mistress disappeared soon after the trial. No social media, no forwarding address, no goodbyes. His friends stopped calling, and the nonprofit board quietly removed his name from their directory. His once published image crumbled beneath the weight of public disgrace. Meanwhile, Cassandra moved forward. After her daughter Eliana was born healthy and strong, Cassandra took a part-time role lecturing at a local university on financial ethics. At first, she thought it would be temporary, just something to stay intellectually engaged while raising her daughter. But the more she taught, the more she saw the hunger in her students' eyes, especially the women who hung around after class, asking for resources, telling her about boyfriends who controlled the money, fathers who pressured them into shady accounting. That's when the idea hit her. She decided to build something bigger. Within a year, Cassandra launched Safe Ledger, a nonprofit dedicated to helping women understand financial self-protection. It offered free online courses, legal workshops, one-on-one mentoring, and emergency help for those escaping financial abuse. She partnered with women's shelters, law schools, and ethical finance experts. Her mission wasn't revenge, it was education, empowerment, and prevention. At the nonprofit's launch event, Cassandra stood by the registration table, nervously checking her note cards for the speech she was about to give. She looked out over the crowd, students, professors, donors, volunteers, and felt her knees nearly give from the emotion. It wasn't just a launch. It was her transformation, sealed in stone. Then a woman approached her quietly, early 30s, with soft eyes and a trembling voice. "You don't know me," she said, "but I read about your story in that article last year. My ex was draining our joint account, gaslighting me. I was 8 months pregnant and didn't know what to do. Your words, your courage, gave me the push to get out. You saved my life without knowing it." Cassandra's eyes welled. She reached forward and pulled the woman into a tight hug. "That's exactly why I did it," she whispered. The applause at the event that day wasn't just for a launch, it was for a legacy. Cassandra wasn't defined by betrayal or theft or the man who tried to reduce her to rubble. She was defined by the way she rebuilt. Stronger, clearer, louder. She was no longer someone Marcus discarded. She was the woman who taught hundreds of others never to be silenced, never to be stolen from again. Cassandra sat at her kitchen table in the soft morning light, flipping through the journals she had once filled during the darkest stretch of her life. The pages were worn at the edges, smeared with tears, and frantic ink-long nights of confusion, moments when she doubted her instincts, questioned her worth, and begged the universe for clarity. She remembered writing, "Maybe I'm just hormonal, maybe I'm imagining it." That sentence was underlined 3 times. Now she gently crossed it out with a pen and wrote above it, "I wasn't imagining anything, I was waking up." The memories didn't sting anymore. They informed her. They reminded her how far she had come. She no longer measured her pain in what Marcus took, her jewelry, her dignity, their illusion of a future. Instead, she measured her strength in what she reclaimed, her voice, her independence, and her daughter's safety. Eliana was 5 now, vibrant, inquisitive. She had Cassandra's sharp eyes and even sharper sense of fairness. One morning while brushing her teeth, she looked up and asked, "Mommy, why don't I see Daddy?" Cassandra paused, set the toothbrush down, and crouched to her daughter's level. She didn't want to burden her with too much too soon, but she also refused to lie. She took a breath and said, "Because some people choose lies, but we choose truth, and truth is what makes our home safe." Eliana nodded, then reached up and touched Cassandra's cheek. "I like our home." Cassandra smiled and hugged her tightly. That child wasn't just a reason to keep going. She was the proof that Cassandra had made it. That despite the wreckage, the courtrooms, the headlines, and the betrayal, life had bloomed again, stronger, cleaner, real. She no longer checked Marcus's name online. She didn't wonder about where he was or who he was trying to impress now. She had no interest in the hollow shell of a man who once tried to strip her of everything. That part of her life was closed, not hidden, but sealed. And from that sealed wound had come wisdom. In the evenings, after Eliana was asleep, Cassandra would sometimes return to her nonprofit work with a glass of tea and a full heart. She read emails from women across the country, some quietly asking for help, others loudly thanking her for speaking out. Each message was a thread, connecting her pain to purpose, her past to other women's futures. She had always been the kind of woman who wanted to build something lasting. At first, she thought that meant a family with Marcus, but now she understood. Her real legacy wasn't built with a man. It was built in truth, in strength, and in the unwavering decision to rise. She no longer needed closure. She had clarity. And as the sun rose over her home the next morning, Cassandra didn't look back. Not even once. They told me the robbery was random, that it was probably some teenager or a desperate stranger looking for quick cash. But I knew better. The real thief was wearing a wedding band. He slept beside me every night. He smiled in family photos. He kissed my forehead while hiding financial betrayal and staged lies behind my back. He took my ring, my trust, and tried to take my future. But he failed. Because I took it all back, and I gave it a voice. Cassandra, I was robbed by the man I loved, but I rose, rebuilt, and now I help others protect what's theirs. I took my pain and turned it into purpose. I stopped waiting to be rescued, and became the one, holding the light for others in the dark. If you've ever been lied to, stolen from, or gaslit into silence, your story matters. Your instincts are not wrong. Your truth is not too much. You don't have to suffer quietly or endure betrayal without recourse. And you're not alone. Subscribe to Veiled Fury for more stories of betrayal, justice, and power reclaimed. Because every scar has a story, and every woman deserves to write her own ending.